All right. Hello, I'm Fernando Sosa, and you're watching Mindset of Steel live show. In this show, we encourage you to crush your limiting beliefs, punch fear in the face, and take massive action in your business and your personal life by focusing on the 80% psychology and 20% strategies. I'm very excited. This is episode number 27 of our weekly live show. And we have a special guest coming up shortly. And before we get started, I just wanted to thank you again for joining. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and thumbs up and the notification icon so you could be notified when we go live. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please go ahead and leave us a review. And we're also available on Spotify and other podcasting platforms. If you haven't checked us out, we have information and content on our website. So join the community by going to mindsetofsteel.com. And there you can be part of our community. We have a private Facebook group, and we have regular content that we put up during the week. And we're building up more information, more material, some special events that we have planned. So just go to mindsetofsteel.com and sign up there. And we just did a little refresh of the website. You also have the calendar there, so you can see the events that are coming up and the guests that are coming up and anything else that we have planned. All right. So I'm very excited. Like I said, today we're going to talk to our special guest, and we are getting into a topic that I find very interesting. We're going to talk about the skills that you have and the skills that are taught or that were not taught, and the importance of career planning. And our special guest is Mark Herschberg. And before we get in, introduce him, let me introduce him to you. He has built startup companies. He's tracked terrorists on the dark web. Oh, gotta ask him about that. He's authored 14 patents. So this guy's very smart. But listen to this. He was a championship ballroom dancer. What? And serves on the board of a few nonprofits. So after teaching, it gets better, guys. After teaching over 20 years at MIT, he's written the Career Toolkit, the essential skills for success that no one taught you. So he's joining us live from New York. And so let's go ahead and welcome Mark. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having me in that wonderful introduction.
Awesome. I'm excited that you're here. Mark, you are not too far. You're across the pond from me. You're in New York. I'm in New Jersey.
Across the stream, yes.
Yes. And so weather-wise, we're all kind of under the same cloud.
We are at the moment. Yes, indeed.
So, Mark, I read your bio, and I think you got like a very catchy bio. You got a lot going on there that you've done. I'm very curious, and I'm sure you get asked this question, but what is this all about tracking terrorists on the dark web? Can you explain that to me?
My graduate work at MIT was in cryptography. And so throughout my career, I've been in and out of the field of cybersecurity. Now, cybersecurity, sometimes it's how we keep your passwords safe, but we can be a little more proactive. And at one company, we would go to the dark web. This is where a lot of cyber criminals interact with each other, terrorists, some other bad people. And we would proactively go and try and figure out who these people were. Who are they? Where do they live? What are they trying to do? Where are they trying to do it? And it's intelligence gathering. And that information would then be purchased by various government agencies, but also corporate security teams, so they can be prepared for the attacks that might come against them.
Okay, I see. That's very interesting. And then with regards to the patents, and I guess, can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I have a number of patents in different fields. Most of them are probably in cybersecurity, in authentication systems. When I worked with Wendell Brown and some other folks at Averon, we were building a lot of cybersecurity patents. I also have some patents in digital media. and online advertising, and I have a patent around the app that I did for the book. So in various different fields.
Wow, that's awesome. We'll get into the book and the app. That's awesome. So I guess the ballroom dancing was sort of a hobby that you got into really deep.
That was a hobby. MIT, this surprises a lot of people. MIT has one of the biggest and arguably top ballroom dance teams in the country. We've produced some national champions, and I was fortunate to start dancing when I was an undergrad. I joined the team a little later than that. And I spent actually most of my 20s competing around the country and occasionally internationally in ballroom dancing.
That's awesome. Nice. Very nice. Very impressive. Well-rounded. That's a good conversation topic to talk at parties. I guess it's a good, that's very interesting. Now, Mark, let's stretch our minds a bit here. You know that in life, and I guess for our viewers here, in life, we grow up with certain parameters, right? We learn from our upbringing. We learn from school, and we follow them. We follow these rules that we learn, but some are implicit, but some are not so much. We learn how to read, we learn how to do math, we learn history, etc. Right? We learn all of these things growing up, but then there are some skills that we normally don't learn, and yet they're very important to have in life. What do you think about that? Do you agree on that?
100%. Think back to throughout most of your life, you've probably heard people tell you networking is so important. It's not what you know, it's who you know. We've heard this. I heard it as a child from my parents, from other adults. We heard it from our teachers, our professors. You heard this for years, but did anyone actually sit down and tell you, and by the way, here is how you network. Here is how you build and utilize these relationships. No one bothered to teach this to us. When it comes to team building, maybe we get a little bit of that, maybe this much from some professor or teacher who spends 5 minutes saying, and by the way, here's how to be effective on a team. Okay, but now let's look at your actual project. We know teamwork is so important in our careers. All these skills, people give it lip service. They tell us it's important, and they do mean it, but they never actually stopped to teach it to us.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Is there some history behind it in terms of the education system and the curriculum that is so focused on the mechanics of things and not on the social aspect?
There is. If you look in the US at the history of elementary school, junior high school, and high school, it was really just trying to make you be functional in the real world. So reading, writing, arithmetic, we've obviously expanded that a bit. But it's not expected to turn you into a profession or a professional worker, right? It's just enough that you can kind of function in society. And we assume you're going to learn more in college or university. At that level, universities are run by professors. And I work with a bunch of them, and they're wonderful people. But if you think about when you have accounting professors, what they're doing, they run the accounting department, and they're saying, well, is this person worthy of an accounting degree? If they take so many classes, we say, okay, they're now an accountant or a chemist or a historian. But all they've said is we confer that they have reached a certain level of experience within our discipline. They're not saying you're a good worker. They're not saying you're capable. They're not saying you have other skills. They don't care. They just care, do you know enough about accounting that we feel, yeah, you qualify to be called an accountant. And so no one has looked at the broader skill set to make you functional within society as a whole. And that's what universities need to shift to in the 21st century, but they haven't quite done so yet.
Right. So I see you have to have sort of a change in mindset here. So what are your thoughts in terms of what like quote unquote hard skills versus soft skills in terms of career development?
Well, hard skills, and particularly when we think STEM skills, everyone's pushing STEM skills. And as someone who has multiple STEM degrees, I am a fan of it. I think we need more mathematical literacy in this country. I think engineering and STEM jobs are going to be much more prevalent going forward, and those are good career paths to go down. But even if you're doing purely STEM, you need some of these other skills. Traditionally, they're called soft skills. Now people are calling them power skills. We like to call them firm skills, skills that you use in a firm, and they're not quite as hard as these mathematical and engineering skills, but they're not quite as fluffy as some others, because we can really be proactive in how we think about leadership and networking and negotiations. We can formally define some of these and build up those skill sets to make ourselves more effective. So I would encourage everyone to focus on these firm skills, no matter your profession.
Yeah, I agree. Like I actually have a technology background, and I started out as I studied electrical engineering, and then I went to computer science, and I've always considered myself a very analytical person, and even critical. And even today, I struggle a little bit with that, but I've improved on that. But things tend to be either black or white, and I attributed that to my background. But later in life, I kind of grew up, and I learned that life is not so polar opposites. And so I still struggle with that, like I said today, but I'm more flexible and open. And when since you have an engineering background, and you understand algorithms, and that's like me thinking back in school, algorithms, right? We hear about algorithms today, and we just think about Facebook algorithm, YouTube, right? We social media algorithm. But I'm thinking about algorithm is back when I was in school, programming and learning these things, right? So with an engineering background, do you see black and white, or has that impacted your way of thinking? Does it challenge your mindset in terms of the other non-hard skills that are important in career advancement?
Really good question. And I struggled with this myself early on. So here's a challenge I faced and a lot of engineers face. And this used to be a problem, I think, at MIT as a whole until we started to address it. As engineers, we see the world black and white, right and wrong, correct, incorrect. And MIT in particular, we're a very good meritocracy, right? Because unlike a liberal arts school, where you can have two people both write a paper about Shakespeare that completely disagree with each other, but they're both right. But in the world of science, you and I take a chemistry test, and you get a 92 and I get an 80, and we say, you're smarter than me. You put more right answers down. Doesn't matter who the professor liked better. You are objectively smarter. We could measure this objectively. And now we would think at a place like MIT, such a meritocracy, well, you want the smartest person, right? So if we're both applying for a job, well, you should get the job. You got the higher score. You were smarter. They should take the smarter person. And if I got the job because I was best friends with the CEO's son, you say, yeah, it was networking, but it's really nepotism and it's kind of sketchy. And that's a very black and white view of objectively, it's just who got more right answers. But then let's look at a different way. Okay, you do want someone smart in this role, but what else do we want? Well, if I'm hiring, I want someone who is reliable, who's hardworking, who's trustworthy, who I know can think on his feet. There's a whole bunch of other skills. How well can we really evaluate that in a candidate during an interview process? A little bit. So if the CEO says, well, I've known Mark since he was 5 years old, he's always come to my house, I've always known he's responsible and trustworthy and hardworking, and yeah, maybe he didn't get the highest score, but that's okay because all these other skills are so important to this role, then I get the job, and my network, my relationships helped, even though it feels like, no, I jumped the line there. But that's going from this narrow view of it's just about who is smartest in the subjective test to it's a broad set of skills, and they all interact and kind of balance each other. And when you look more holistically, I might indeed be the better candidate.
Yeah, this all resonates with me a lot. Like, as you see, our motto is to focus on 80% psychology and 20% strategy, right? And the reason I like that is because I believe that it's not always about the technical aspect of things, but how you present it and how you market it. Many times we are taught to focus on building a widget or the mechanical aspect of the work that you do, and being the best at what you do. But we tend to over focus on the strategies, and we disregard on the psychology and the mindset really that you have to have. And yeah, what do you agree with
I
that?
would say, in college, this is another unfortunate side effect of our education system. College is always teaching us what is the right answer. And that's certainly important. You want to start with the right answer. But in the real world, it's not just about getting the right answer. It's about conveying the right answer. Because your boss doesn't say, here's the paper with the test, and at the bottom, write the answer, and let's see if you get it correct. Your boss says, here's a problem we have to solve. In fact, your boss, he or she might not even know the exact problem. You might go back and say, hey, I want to change the problem slightly. I want to figure out the right question to ask. And then when you find the right answer, how do you convey that answers and say, this is the right one? How do you pitch it to your boss? And especially for those of us in technology, although all of us have this to some extent, those of us in technology, when we have a complex technical solution, how do we explain that to people outside of technology? But if you're in finance, how do you explain the situation and the options to people who don't have a finance background? If you see things from marketing, how do you explain that to non-marketers who might not understand the subtleties of what goes into marketing? So it's not just about the right answer. That was sufficient for college, but conveying that answer to the right people is so important in our careers and rarely, if ever, taught.
Yeah. And in terms of conveying and presenting, and you can say also market yourself. I mean, you think about like an example of let's say McDonald's, right? I always think about that. Is McDonald's the best tasting burger out there? I would not think so, but they market themselves better than a lot of the burger joints that do marketing. So they present themselves better and they win. They basically win because they're marketing better. So it's not necessarily, you can focus on being the best burger joint, but if people don't know about you, it's not going to be sustainable, I think, in the long term. And I think McDonald's is a good example in that. Like my kids, another thing about McDonald's, like McDonald's with those Happy Meals and those toys are they're killing it. My kids love McDonald's because of the toys. They've gone to other restaurants where they have great chicken nuggets, great French fries, but they don't have a toy. So they don't really remember the name of the place, right? It's about how you market yourself in presentation. So the toy has nothing to do with the meal. It probably, it adds a few bucks in terms of cost, but it retains people more, right? So how you present yourself matters.
And in this case, right, we know with McDonald's, it might not be the best burger, right? We know that there are better burgers out there, but you are guaranteed what you're getting. If I walk into a McDonald's, I know exactly what it will taste like. I know the value for the dollar I'm getting. Now, different people might value that differently, but I know, okay, I spend this money, this is what I'm getting. If I walk into a random burger joint in a city I've never been to, I might spend more money, I might get a better burger, it might be a horrible burger. And so this is similar to that example we gave earlier. It's not the best burger. I might not have been the smartest person in that example earlier, but you had that reliability. Then this case I had because of my network of knowing the CEO's son, and the CEO's known me for years. Or here we know that McDonald's reliability, we know that brand, and we know what we're getting. And many of us, when we think about building our professional brands, we need to think about how are we perceived? And are we just perceived as being really good in one narrow area? Are we just perceived as a really smart person, but maybe not easy to work with? Are we perceived as a good team player? Are we perceived as someone who's a leader? And if that's not how we want to be perceived, we need to proactively change that and go out and address and change our brand image so we can be seen for the opportunities we want in the future.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to, step aside and don't let your ego determine what direction you go in terms of presentation, because I think that a lot of people, especially small business owners, they're stuck in their own cells, in their own heads, and don't see how other people are getting the message or not. So I think that that is key. So let me ask you a question, Mark. What do you think is the difference in terms of communication between, we're talking about careers. So there's somebody at the top, or not in a bad way, top or bottom, but somebody's on the top and somebody is at the bottom, or in terms of communication, It has to be both ways of the communication. How do you, and I think that's a challenge because one person is trying to filter out of a lot of candidates. And so the person is listening to what the person is saying, and the other person is typically speaking a lot and not listening, I think. What do you think about that?
This is in the context of hiring, you're asking, or in general?
In terms of career and the outcome that you're looking for in terms of getting the career or making it in the career of your choice.
So certainly as we think about trying to get to the next step and trying to stand out among the other candidates, it's very important that we think about what does the other person want. Interviewing is sales. You are selling yourself, and every salesperson knows you begin by saying, who is my customer? What is it that she wants? What is she looking for? What's important to her? Is it IQ? Is it experience? Is it someone easy to work with? You want to understand that. And unfortunately, most job descriptions, they're incomplete. They talk about some mechanical skills, knowledge of these tools, experience with this type of product or type of work. And sure, that's important. I'm not saying you should just disregard that. But once you say, okay, I've got 4 years of this experience, I know how to use that tool, you and everyone else, what else are they looking for that they probably haven't put into the job description? And this does come down to, do they want a leader? And if so, what type of leader? A leader that can grow, a leader that can get them through difficult times, a leader that can build coalitions between unwilling partners? Do they want someone who's a good communicator? Every company says, oh, good communication skills. What does that mean? Does that mean they just don't mumble when they talk? Does it mean they're good at writing emails? Does it mean they communicate well with the people on their team, the people in other departments, people outside the company, customers and partners? It's really not well defined. And what you need to do as a candidate is to uncover what is it they might be looking for and make sure you sell yourself to these unwritten points that are part of the job.
Yeah. And one thought that came to my mind is that, like, the way I see people, like, imagine a 10-lane highway, and every person is in a highway, and every person is driving in one direction and has their way of thinking. Their mindset is one way, and everybody's different. But the thing is that in life, when we try to communicate with somebody else, we kind of have to intersect that highway. But not everybody's at the same speed and the same, there's differences, and there's differences in the way we think. So the challenge is, when we get into that intersection with somebody else, how do we, communicate in a way that the other person is going to listen to you? Because everybody's at their own speed, focused on what they want. And sometimes the message is hard to get to the person that's on the other lane.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Very good point. And this is why I cover in Chapter 7 communications. And there are techniques that we can do. So I'm going to give a really basic example of this. I go a little deeper in the book. We think about people being left-brained and right-brained people. So there is an acting technique we can use. Actors, when they practice a scene, will do the reading of the scene. You and I might be rehearsing the scene. We're going to read the lines together, but we're going to try it different ways. Right? Same words, but let's try it just completely flat, like a robot. Let's try it where we're overly emotional, like comically emotional. Let's try it as a drama. Let's try it as a comedy. And we do all this to kind of stretch ourselves and see different ways this might work. Right? And then for certain scenes, we should do it as a comedy. For certain ones, we should do it as a tragedy or a drama. Right? And we're going to recognize there are different styles that can make this scene more or less effective. So let's take this to our left and right brain example. The way I would convey a message to someone who is so purely left brain, right, who is just that extreme, almost, on the autism spectrum, pretty far along, how you explain it. You're going to use logical argument. You're going to use a very organized approach to go through point by point, maybe in great detail. Now, if you want to convey the same message to someone who's very right-brained, how are you going to do it? You're not going to sit there and say, let me detail you my 20-point plan. You're going to pitch them on the big picture. You're going to sell them emotionally on why this matters. And you can think about, okay, which way do I want to go? And for this person, now we're not all left brain or right brain, but maybe I can pull in pieces of this. Just like when we do that scene, it's not probably going to be purely one way or another. We're going to hit certain lines more funny, more dramatic, more flat. And so we can incorporate that into our style, into our communication style, to communicate with different types of people. And if you're doing one-on-one, you might say, I'm going to tune it just to this one person, my audience. If you're speaking to a broad audience, you might resonate on multiple methods just to kind of catch different people who are going to want to hear that message differently.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful what you just said. Just the awareness, just having the awareness that people, there's differences and there's differences in how you can communicate to reach different type of people depending on how they are. Because again, somebody might just say, "Oh, I'm just going to talk the same way to everybody," and that doesn't really serve them well. Let's talk a little bit more about your book.
I was going to say, I had one of my students came back after this lesson and said, this was so helpful when I came to my internship and we had a whole bunch of people go up on stage to talk. I looked at them and said, using the model we did, oh, that's a very quantitative person. That's a very holistic person. That's a very procedural person. I could recognize it in how they presented. And just that knowledge, to your point, just that awareness suddenly made them understand better who these people were and how they were trying to convey their information.
That's awesome. So I have a picture here of your book. So tell me about your book. The book is called The Career Toolkit. And what's the subtitle?
Essential Skills for Success That No One Taught You. The book itself is based on feedback that we've gotten at MIT and feedback that other universities have gotten across the country from corporate America, where they've said, these are the skills we're looking for in people we're hiring, but we're just not finding it. This is not just for undergrads. This is not just for MIT or science and engineering people. These are broad general skills. The book itself is broken into 3 sections. Section 1, career, how to create and execute on a career plan. Section 2, how to be effective in your job. Things like managing your manager, understanding corporate culture and politics, seeing how you add value to your company so you're seen as adding value. Section 3, interviewing. Now, there's lots of content on how to interview out there, but as a candidate, many of us will have to do hiring. And so learning how to hire effectively is important, or even as a candidate, just understanding what do they want on the other side of the table makes us a better candidate. Section 2, leadership and management, and we break it down to people management and process management. And then the 3rd section on interpersonal dynamics, communication, negotiation, networking, and ethics.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So it's definitely some things that I don't think somebody taught me that. So you got to really look for it. And I think you put it all together in this book. Very interesting. And so the book is available on Amazon, right? People can
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and even through your local bookstores, through certain online services. You can go to the website and it can take you to, if you want to buy local, but Amazon and Barnes and Noble, of course.
That's amazing. And one of the things I noticed on your website is that you also have an app that's linked to the book. Tell me about that.
One of the challenges when you read a book like this, you say, okay, well, that was great. That was useful. And then 3 weeks later, you forget most of it. And in fact, even if you remember some of it, you're not carrying the book with you in that interview. You're not carrying the book with you to a networking event. So I want to make the content useful to you when and where you need it. So there's a free app on the Apple and Android stores, and it's linked from the website. You can download the app. You don't even need to open it. It's just going to pop up once a day, a basic reminder. One of the tips in the book, it's like if you went through the book with a highlighter, this is what you would highlight. And it just pops up and you go, oh, right, that was a useful tip. Swipe it away. It takes 3 seconds. But we know from education, this is spaced repetition, fancy name for reinforcement. Just reminding you what you learned. That's going to help you retain it better. You can also use it if you're about to go into a negotiation or a networking event. Open up the app, flip through some of the tips, and get that crash refresher course. I want this information to be in your hands when and where you need it. And that's what the app allows.
Wow. And so this app comes with the book, or is it you have to buy it separately?
It is completely free. And look, the reality is you can download the app without buying the book. If you're not sure about the book, download the app, look at the tips. Okay, why am I giving away the content for free? A lot of the tips, it's not just, oh, you should follow up after you meet someone. Okay, yeah, I've heard that before. When you have it in context in the book and we explain how to do that and give a lot of concrete steps, I think it's a lot more valuable. But then by giving away the app, I can help reinforce that. You get reminded, you might see that one little tip, but you're reminded of the context and the story it's in. But if you're not sure about the book, go look through some of the tips, see if this is useful, and then help that let that help you decide if you want to buy the book.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. I never really seen that combination. And I think it makes total sense. And I think that because you are this, person of technology and has all this background, it doesn't surprise me that you're doing this something different, that you're having an app on this attached to this. This is awesome. That's very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't expect to build it. I thought someone must have done this and I'll just go license it, but it didn't exist. So I really do think this will be the future of books, that we do need to take the content of books out from between those covers and put it out where the audience wants it. And so I think we'll see more of these going forward.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Mark, we're coming to the end here. I want to thank you for being here. And if you're watching this, you hop in late, watch the full episode, watch the replay, and leave us any questions. We'll follow up with questions. You put the questions in the comment below. If you want to follow Mark, I got the website here, right? That's the website, the KoreaToolkitBook.com.
And from there, you can follow me on social media.
Awesome. And you can connect with Mark from there. All right. So this has been episode number 27 of Mindset of Steel live show. Thank you for being here. Mark, you want to leave us with the final words of encouragement for everybody watching and listening?
The skills in the book are incredibly additive. Learning just how to be a little better at negotiating or leading or building your network, not being the world's best, but a little better. This can have a cumulative effect on your career because every interaction going forward will result in a better outcome from that negotiation, from that team building, from that communication interaction. So invest some time in these skills, even just 10, 20 hours a year. It's going to have a massive payoff on your career.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.